Hi there. Let's take a journey through women's football in the Philippines. Together, we'll find out more about their first appearance at the World Cup, how they qualified for the World Cup, and where domestic football in the Philippines is at.
Because women's football matters.
The Philippines are located in Southeast Asia, next to Indonesia, Vietnam, and Thailand. The capital city is Manila, where roughly 1.8 million people live. Overall, the Philippines are made up of 7,641 islands. About 115.6 million people live across these islands, and there are over 170 dialects spoken in the Philippines. Now, let's talk about football. The Philippines Football Federation was established in 1907. The women's football team was introduced in the 1980s and has been a regular participant in the Women's Asian Cup since their first appearance in 1981. The first match was a 2-0 defeat against Hong Kong on the 7th of June 1981. 8,000 people attended that match. The recent success story of the national team began with a strong performance at the 2022 Asian Cup in India, where the Philippines reached the semi-finals and therefore earned a spot at the 2023 World Cup in New Zealand and Australia. It was the first ever appearance for the Philippines at a World Cup. They lost their opening match 2-0 to Switzerland. In their second match against home nation New Zealand, the atmosphere created by the Philippine fans was particularly impressive. Even before the match, there was a fan march to the stadium. They scored their first ever World Cup goal and won their first ever World Cup match. After that success, they suffered a heavy defeat in the last group match against Norway, which they lost 6-0. The World Cup has been the biggest landmark in Filipinian football. To talk about women's football in the Philippines, we have a few experts on board. These are our guests.
Hi, my name is Kiara Fontanilla. I'm also known as Kiki.
My name is Cathrine Graversen. I'm from Denmark, but I'm also half Filipino. Yeah, and I'm a professional football player.
I'm one of the goalkeepers on the Philippine women's national football team.
My name is Venice. You can call me Ven. I'm a longtime supporter of the Philippine women's national football team. I started creating and managing social media pages, including the official page of the national team now. I'm one of the incorporators of the Philippine Women's Football Association, and I also started a podcast called Football Brew.
The Philippines have had success in recent years, but it hasn't always been like that. Venice tells us how they got there.
It's been slowly building for more than a decade, and so it really started back in 2012 when they started reaching out players of Filipino heritage. So just copying from basically what the men's team has done, getting like players overseas who have Filipino heritage. So they did that. They started, and I think there were more than 200 or 300 potential players who came late 2021. That was the start of the success of this batch that played for the World Cup. So the preparation was, I would say, over 2 years.
Can you explain a little bit how it works? Like, how do they find these players? How do they recruit them? How do they be in contact with them?
In the Filipino community in California, that's most of the camps were held there. I don't think we had a camp in Europe until recently. So these are a series of camps that they held mostly in the US.
Back in 2017, they started having these tryout camps in the States. I didn't have a passport back then, but I did attend to the training camp, and like that's how I became interested in being a part of the national team as well, and they were helping you gaining the passports, like giving you all the information you needed and helping you out like that.
The tryout was 3 days. So first tryout there was like 160 girls, and then it dwindled down to like 20. And then after the tryout, you would train with the senior team, which is the team I'm on right now.
Playing for a country, your country, like I feel like Philippines is my country. But yeah, like it's different for sure because you're playing for a whole nation versus just like a tiny little club. But as for being nervous, I feel like I've been playing for so many years now that I know how to like adjust the level of nervousness. So yeah, I wouldn't say nervous, but more excited.
A lot of the players also get in touch with the federation through the social media pages. And then they send their video and that's it. So there's a big difference of how they get the players now for the last 2 or 3 years compared to how it was before.
Do you think it's kind of an issue for them when a lot of diaspora players come in, or yeah, if you know what I mean, like how does that work together?
I do, I do. It's a very sensitive and a kind of complicated issue. Even the federation, I think, is having a bit of a hard time with that. I wouldn't say there is a conflict, but I would say that of course some of the local players feel that they were abandoned or left behind, right? Because a lot of the focus are now on the diaspora players to represent the country, and we the local players just get the breadcrumbs, if you will. I mean, sure, because of our participation in the World Cup, that has inspired a lot of the local players. But of course, there's always this argument of um, are these players Filipino enough, and things like that. But I think because of the exposure of the national team for the last 2 or 3 years, I think it opened the eyes of a lot of the Filipinos of how global we all are. Really continues, but it's an issue that the federation needs to address. There has been like solutions like, okay, do we put a quota, like, and not just we should have like X number of local players and X number of diaspora players, and things like that. But I don't think those wishes of having more local players in the national team would be possible until such time that we've really established like really good local players that can compete at the level that where the diaspora players are, because they're really that good. And I think one thing that differentiates the locals and the diaspora players are the opportunities and the infrastructure that they they have.
For Asian teams, one way to qualify for a World Cup is the Asia Cup. This is how the Philippines in 2022 qualified for the 2023 World Cup in New Zealand and Australia. Kiara was part of the squad at the Asia Cup.
By ourselves and only within the girls and then with the entire staff. Like our goal was World Cup. We just wanted, because we did this concept of taking it one step at a time. For us, we made it to the tournament. That was step one. Now we have to win our game. So that's step two. And we could not be nervous to qualify because we knew that was our main goal, but we had to concentrate each game, like take one game at a time. So that's how we broke it down. And so we had those constant conversations. So when the day it actually happened, because we had to get through Thailand, we had to get through Australia, we had to get through Indonesia before we could even play Chinese Taipei. So once we got to Chinese Taipei, we were like on it. You could feel the energy like before the game in the locker room. There was just some sort of energy within the team that was like, oh my gosh, we can do this. Like, this is the game. If we win this game, we're going. Like, we were just like, oh, like, part of my heart, oh shit moment. Like, so we were like, okay, so game starts. It's going. It's strong competition between the two countries. And it was like, and I was sitting that game. I only played the Australia game, but I was sitting literally this entire time like this. I was just like so nervous. And I was just like, okay, well, here we go. It's going great. And then we scored our first goal. I think it was like 50th minute, I think, in the second half. So in the 5 minutes into the second half, our goal came from Quinley Casada. And I just remember it was just such an unreal goal because I think she was like not even facing the goal when she like touched it, and it kind of like curled just perfectly around the goalie. And I remember all of us kind of erupting. We're like, oh my gosh, we're winning this thing. And then it was going great and it got dwindling down. And we were like, oh my gosh, this is not happening. We're literally about to qualify for the World Cup for the very first time. And then they hit their goal. And you could just feel all of our energy kind of deplete like immediately. And we're just like, oh my gosh, what is happening? Because it was literally almost like, I think it was the 75th minute when they scored. And it was just like, oh no. And so we had to like, a lot of us were like holding each other's hands because we're like, okay, we just need to get through this half and then we can go into extra time and then we can figure it out from them. So we get through the half, we get through extra time. It goes to PKs and all of us are like, oh, here we go. We're like, oh my gosh. So we like prayed as a team. We're like, okay, whatever happens. We're all proud of each other. And we're gonna take it one step at a time, one PK at a time. And so PKs happened, and I remember, I think I was standing between Olivia's sister Chandler, because we went to high school together. So I was kind of like, we're kind of each other's like comfort person when it comes to like really strenuous like times. And I just remembered she was like hooked onto my arm, and then I was hooked. I forgot who was on my right, but I remember she was on my left, and we were like holding each other. And so we hit our few, and then they hit, and then we unfortunately missed our first one, and we're like, oh my gosh, here we go. And it's like, but I don't know, I have like this sense, I don't know, and I was like, no, Olivia has this, like she got it, like she'll save us, don't worry guys. I was just, but I'm in my head, I'm like, oh crap, we have to win. But I had to, like I said, I have this tendency, I need to keep a very calm front for my teammates, even though I'm not in goal. And so Liv pulled out like two or three amazing saves. And then it came down to to Serena, and who hit the winning PK. And I just remember the game before, she missed a PK. So I know that she was under a lot of pressure. And I just remembered Chandler, like she didn't even want to look. She didn't want to look at the PK. She's like, I can't watch. So I'm like holding her head like a child. And then I was like, I couldn't even watch that. I was like this. And I remember the goal went in, and you could just see it was kind of like a slight pause. And then we realized, oh my God, we just qualified for the World Cup. And then we all kind of charged onto the field, and it was just absolutely surreal. We were all crying. Coach Allen was crying. Naz, everyone was crying. There was not a dry eye in sight. And it was just such a phenomenal moment, because obviously as a small country, a country that is mostly known for basketball and boxing, for us to create that history for our country was just absolutely like, it's really hard to describe it, because like if you weren't on the team, you can't really like know what was happening. Because I just remember like it was just like immense pride, and like we know that we were able to do this, and now that we did it, we have to work even harder to be prepared for the next thing, which was World Cup.
Finally, the big tournament, the World Cup in New Zealand and Australia, was ahead. For Kiara, a dream she didn't even dare to have came true.
First game obviously was super emotional for us because it was our first game. I think all of us were crying because we heard our national anthem playing on the world stage, and it was just like there's a very popular picture of our captain crying, and it just kind of embodied all of us. And we did lose our first game, and there's always like obviously the players, we have thoughts on like why we lost our first game, and for whatever reason. And so that was amazing. I think that's what really embodied the energy and everything that we needed, especially against New Zealand. We played New Zealand in New Zealand, so we knew like, oh my God, here we go. It's gonna be all New Zealand fans. And that was like, we already knew that that's gonna be the energy. But then the minute we went out to warm up, you just see all Philippines flags everywhere in the entire stadium. And it's a big stadium. It was a really big stadium. So it was just like it was just kind of like silence. Like we knew silence in our heads, but we knew everything that was happening around us. And we felt the support, we felt the love, hearing the entire stadium. All of us were crying again, but hearing the entire stadium singing the national anthem, even like New Zealand fans that didn't know the anthem were trying to sing it. And um but yeah, no, it was just electric. That's like a probably the word I can use is electric. And to from the starting whistle to the ending whistle was the absolute and utmost loving and support. And I just remember I was nervous the entire game. And I was like, I think like I was like pacing. Me and my teammate were pacing because we're like, oh my gosh, we can't do this. We're like shaking. We're like very like, oh my gosh. And then especially after we scored our very first goal, kudos to Sada for the assist and Serena for the header. And I just remembered we all jumped up and we were cheering and everything. And Serena ran all the way to us. And there's this funny picture because I get it. There's this picture where all of us are cheering around our head coach, and he just has this like very stern look on his face, and it's like as if he wasn't excited, but he had to keep it in because obviously the game was not over. We still had a lot of time left, and it was only the first half. So we were like, we obviously do have a lot of time left, and we had to keep that in our heads. Like, we still have a lot of time left. We can't let up. And we got into the second half, and it was a battle. They were not letting down. They were high pressing, and I remember, like I said, I was pacing. I was like getting uncomfortable on the sideline. I was like, oh my gosh. And they came to the point where there was a shot off, and it hit the post, and all of us were like, oh, okay. And then there was another one where the ball got to Hannah Wilkinson, and she crossed it, and it was a header, and it went in, and it got tied, or so we thought. And we're just sitting there like, oh my God, like there's no way. And then thank God for VAR and the new system that they implemented. I think it was the initial ball to Hannah Wilkinson where I think it was Hannah. She was offside by literally a slice of her head. Like it was crazy. And so the goal was called offsides, and we're like, oh my gosh, God is on our side. And then I just remembered I think they probably videoed me just like pacing, kind of like turning around, and then we hear the final whistle, and all of us just charge, and everyone kind of grouped together and like we were all celebrating the team. But then there was a few of us that ran straight to Olivia because Olivia made probably the best save of the tournament in my opinion, because A, got us the win, and B, it was a pretty hard save that she had to make because it's one of those reaction saves that we were literally preparing for because we knew that they're quick, that all had quick triggers. And yeah, she was able to get down and get that one hand and get the ball around the post, and it was great. And that like her performance that game was amazing. I have to say, even though I'm a competitor in the same position, I will give credit where credit's due, and she did really well that game, and she got MVP, like player of the match. So that was amazing. Like, oh crap! So it was like a very happy time, and I just remember a lot of it. So there was two groups, and then we kind of all conjoined together. And then I just remembered, because for me, the fact that my parents were able to come out and watch the games, like I immediately honed in because where they were, and I went into the crowd, and the crowd was trying to like tussle me and like get autographs, but I was like, I want to just be with my family right now, so like give me a little bit and then I'll come around. And that was even cool because I come from like a small city in California, and I'm not like to me I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like signing autographs was like something I never thought I would do. And I went around the entire stadium signing autographs for a good like hour and a half, and it was crazy because I was like, I didn't think I was gonna do this. And then I actually saw one of my college, like an old college acquaintance of mine, because he was working the game because he lived in New Zealand, and I was like, what are you doing here? So that was kind of cool. But yeah, it was just amazing, and the fact that we all got to celebrate with our families after, so that was kind of cool. And even though I didn't play, I still felt immense pride for my team, for the girls that did play. I know it was a hard game because after the game, you could just see a lot of them just kind of drop. From what I saw on social media, what I heard on the news is that there was like lines of supporters like going to meet the girls, and even during the games, one of our other teammates who didn't go to the who wasn't rostered, unfortunately, her name is Camrod. We call her Camille Rodriguez, but we call her Camrod. She not only came to the tournament during the game, but she was able to round up so many of our fans for a viewing party.
Now we're back to the Philippines. The World Cup is over, but it changed the perception of women's football in the Philippines. What's the league setup like in the Philippines? I was wondering about this, like how does it work with all the different islands and the different places? Like, yeah, what is the league system kind of like?
We do have the women PFF Women's Football League. We're supposed to have it, I think, by July or August. I don't have an update on that, but yeah. So majority of the teams that participate in the league are universities, varsity teams, and then we have just very few clubs. So the goal is to I believe the goal is to have more clubs in the future seasons of the league. But right now, five of them are university teams.
And how do they get paid? Like how can they live from the wages they get in the domestic leagues, or are they all working as well?
I wouldn't say it's a professional league. I'd probably say it's an amateur league. A lot of them don't, do football full time. A lot of them have to work, and like I've said, most of them are university teams, so of course they're students first before athletes. So we don't have a fully professional league at this point, but the clubs that we have participating in the league are are growing. So we have, I think, maybe three or four clubs now. Compared to before, it was just usually a club or two, and then the rest are university leagues, which they use it to prepare for the university games.
Okay. And I also saw that you went to the under 17 Asia Cup. Is that correct? Okay, cool. Can you maybe, I don't know, talk about that experience? What was that like to be there and to witness all of that?
Um, it was fun for one, but I think the most memorable thing for me there, aside from of course winning and the rest, it's seeing the conditions of the stadium and the systems that they have in place. So for instance, the last game that we watched versus North Korea was in Bali United Training Center. And so me and my friends, we were just, I mean, it's not as how do I say this, as nice as maybe what you have there in Europe, but coming from the Philippines, that was a big deal for us. And all we were saying to each other was how we wish we had the same infrastructure here in the Philippines. So um that was we were very envious, if you will, of what they have in Indonesia. And of course, being from Southeast Asia, we know that it's possible to have something like that here in the Philippines.
Cathrine is a part of the current national team squad. She told us where the team is at and what she personally wants to achieve in the future.
The national team is so different from back then. Like now we have training camps during the FIFA windows. Back then it was like for 3 months or like a longer period, and it was more difficult. But now it's like developed into a good direction, more professional.
And then did you follow the World Cup or watch the Philippine games?
Yeah, I of course I followed the World Cup. Like in general, I watch a lot of women's football, so it's nice to keep tabs.
What is it like in within the Philippine national team? Because of course there's some players who grew up in the Philippines, and then there are a lot of diaspora players. Is it also sometimes they're hard to kind of have all these different influences and cultures in the team, or what's that like?
I don't know. I feel like it's kind of feels natural in some way, but also like the main part of the national team is from the States, like so like and their culture is like very open and warming and all of that. So like in that way, it's not that difficult. Say it was a Philippine national team filled with Danish people, it would be really hard because we take time to open up and we seem a little cold sometimes, so.
But has that also like playing style wise? Because as you said, a lot of them play in the US, learn to play in the US. Does it, do you kind of see the difference of the playing style when you play in the national team?
Well, yeah, everybody has their own style, of course, but like eventually we stick to the structure that the coach is gonna give us, like the tactics and all of that. So we all like try to adjust towards his vision, if you get what I'm saying. Yeah.
How has it kind of changed when the Philippine national team had a new coach? Again, an Australian coach, but has it? Yeah, have you noticed a shift kind of since Mark Turkessa has taken over?
Well, like I think it's in a positive way. I don't know, like because I wasn't really there with the former coach, like the coach they had during the World Cups. So I don't know like the big difference, to be honest. But at least like the new coach, he's more open minded. He's willing to give players like me like a new chance and stuff like that. So like I'm taking advantage and hoping for the best.
Thank you so much to Kiara, Venice, and Cathrine for taking part in this episode. And thanks to you for going on this journey with us. We hope you learned as much as we did. Feel free to like and subscribe, and we'll be happy to see you next time. The next episode will be on July 10th, as always, and the topic will be Australia.